my memory, this is one of the first GTD-wide town halls we've had, definitely this year, maybe 2 years. And so it's a really big event to get this many people all in one place. We have a full program, we'll try to move through it really quickly. Other than that, I think I'll just welcome Andrew and he'll take it away.
I guess food has never been clapped or 1 minute speech before. It is, I think, the first GTV town hall that I've been part of in Hong Kong ever, I think, actually. During the last 2 years, there's always been PCM, TSC or HSS. But it's, for me, a real pleasure to have everybody here together, because the story I've said for 3.5 years is that we are one business unit. People say sometimes should PCM and TSC split off and should HSS be in market? But absolutely not. As far as I'm concerned, we have the same sort of skill sets. We often have the same overlapping customers. And as far as I'm concerned, well, I'm in charge of GTB, which will be as long as until I'm told otherwise. We are going to stick together as one business unit. But what I'm going to do today is take you through a few ideas, some of which will be familiar, some of which you'll have heard before. Talk a bit about the different sales, the different transformation programs we have running across GTB. Talk about some of the global programs. Again, some of this will be familiar, I'm just giving you an update. And then talk about how well we've done over the last few months and then where we're looking forward for next year and beyond. So that's the broad outline. There will be a Q&A, there will be a few presentations. I think there will be feedback from them. And we'll then have some drinks afterwards. Sorry, before we go into that, just in terms of drinks, I've got to slip away for about 20 minutes around 7 o'clock. So those of you who want to stay on longer and ask some questions, I'll be back about 25 past 7. Firstly, some macro trends, which are the key things. Why is that important? Well, we are very much a player in the global economy. GTB is a transaction business, and we are absolutely reliant on how the economy is growing. And there are 3 trends that the group has identified that are important for the group and therefore important for us. Firstly, emerging markets growing faster than the developed markets. I guess we saw the bad news the other day that China's growth had slipped. Well, those of us in the West thought 9.6% wasn't too bad to slip to. In the West, we're struggling to get 1 or 2 or maybe 3% in Germany. So I think clearly China's growing strongly. India's growing not quite as strongly, but they are forecast to catch up in the next few years. And there's a lot of very strong economies in this part of the world. So that emerging market story is one that is playing very much to the HSBC group position. The second one, world trade growing faster than GDP. Again, if you look at the trade flows around the world, particularly intra-Asia, but also across what we call the South-South divide, it's connecting Latin America into Africa, Middle East, and then the Asia-Pacific region, which is some of the Asia-Pacific region is north of the equator. Not strictly South-South, but it's this southern hemisphere's crescent almost. That's where the growth is. Some of a smaller base than the north-south, the US, Europe, down into the Asia-Pacific region, but it's where the growth is, it's south-south. And again, we are very well positioned apart from in Africa. Very interesting that we didn't go after the Nedbank deal. I don't know why we didn't. Clearly the bank has an interest in that continent. Sandy Flockhart, as the director of the bank, is still responsible for it, and who knows what will happen in the future. But we are very well positioned in the other 3 continents, especially South America, Middle East, and the Asia-Pacific region. So it's something we want to do. The third trend is about world population, longevity. Clearly with longevity increasing, savings will increase. As savings increase, the stock market activities will develop, and there'll be more in different asset classes. And again, the HSS business, and the PCM business to a lesser extent, but particularly the HSS business, absolutely well positioned to be involved in that story. And as you look at the way the HSS strategy is being developed, and Drew and Keane were out here a few weeks ago talking about that, it is about linking up our ability to hold assets and to administer those assets with the execution capabilities inside the global markets world, potentially with the asset management business and the private banking. So we are trying to bring the group better together on an internalised basis in order to meet this sort of trend we're seeing in the global economy. Moving on then, and again, the new normal. What is the new normal? Well, clearly with the Basel regulation, there's a lot of focus at the moment, particularly coming out of G20 in Seoul last week, around the trade story, for example. There's a lot of focus on capital utilisation, less so on liquidity. Liquidity is still important critically, and The crisis 2 years ago reinforced that. But this issue of capital is important. The regulators are not going to come easy on the banks. They are going to continue to insist that banks remain strongly capitalised. And of course, HSBC as a group is incredibly strongly capitalised. Our sort of third quarter results that we informally announced a couple of weeks back showed that our capital has again gone up. And I know that that's quite important for Stuart Gulliver's perspective. He, as the new group CEO, is very interested in both preserving our capital but also in rewarding our shareholders. So we probably are going to see, who knows what can happen in terms of our future profit, but he is very focused on keeping the shareholders happy, but I guess it's going to be a dividend play going forward. But having a strong balance sheet is critical for him, and that strong balance sheet means both strong capital but also well funded. And our AD ratio as a group of around about 80%, 77.9 at the half year, is a very strong position to be in. Really, that is a drag for us when interest rates are low. As Mike Gagan said in his various half-year and full-year results, when interest rates are low, we don't do as well because we don't earn as much on our interest income side of things. Whereas the highly leveraged banks, which are much more asset-focused, are the ones who do better. As interest rates will recover, maybe not next year, but the year after, HSBC as a group is very well positioned to kick in strongly, particularly through PCM and through HSS, which between them contribute about 22-23% of the group's liabilities. So a very important part of the group. Interesting enough, we just had a PCM regional conference that started this week, all the regional heads, and John Coverdale from CMB was talking about the CMB strategy, and he used the same slide. You've probably all seen it in different contexts, but there are some things that are important to us. We have an incredible franchise and a great history. We go all the way back 140 years in this region, and more than 140, but we're well positioned in the other emerging markets of the world, and it's something that's very important for HSBC. We are very keen to enhance our presence. We moved away from the three-legged stool, Europe, Middle East, Europe, Asia Pacific, and North America, to much more 60% now in emerging markets, or probably a better expression of emerging markets is the fastest growing economies. And that's an expression we may well see going forward. So very strong there. In this room alone, there are loads of different nationalities. HSBC has a real ability to leverage the contacts that you can bring into the space of managing this bank, selling the bank's global connectivity to our customer base. And that's important. And it's something that some of our competitors can't necessarily do as well as we can do. In terms of positioning for growth, we've talked about the three global trends that the HSBC group has identified in the previous slides, but we also have to really push hard this connectivity piece. In terms of global banking markets, it's around the multinationals and the institutional client base that we have who are in every part of the world that we're trying to service. But in the CMB space, it's around the leading international business. What differentiates us absolutely from the local banks, and to a lesser extent from the regional banks, is that we can connect up around the world. Our job is to evidence to the investor analysts and the shareholders that we're actually delivering real value, that we are delivering more than the sum of the parts. And then on the right-hand side, two key things. Firstly, One HSBC, absolutely critical to this organisation. There's a review going on at the moment about how effective that is, but it is about transforming the way we do work. It's both systems related, it's process related, it's the way we actually operate as an organisation. Lots of investment going in there. We do need to deliver some value, but and I'll come back to it in a minute. In GTB as well, we have some very key One HSBC programs that we're involved with. And lastly, people engagement. We are sometimes questioning ourselves internally, why do we have to focus so much on people when it's the PBT that counts? Well, we have to focus on people, you and your colleagues, because you deliver future PBT. Current PBT is sort of, if you like, in the bag, almost. So we've got to work quite hard to get it for this year. If we want to build sustainably for the future, making sure that we have people who are engaged, who understand the context of why we do things, who understand the broader strategy, and therefore all working in the same direction in order to deliver. This was our strategic statement from 3 years ago when we did our strategic plan, approved 2 days before Lehman's collapsed. We are going to enter a new MTO next year. We're already contributing to the GBNN MTO, which is going to be released in March. Our own MTO for GTB will be delivered sometime in the third quarter next year, so expect more of that. Just to give you an idea, this $16 billion in revenue by 2015, slight adaptation. By 2013, we expect PCM to be delivering about $5 billion in revenues. So if you grow that about 20% a year, It'll be about 7 billion by 2013. So HSS and TFC, you know what the gap is to fill. I would actually add, by the way, and I should say this probably, TFC have grown right the way through the crisis. It has been phenomenal. Clearly HSS is struggling a bit with the way interest rates have fallen, FX has been less volatile than we'd like. PCM the same, but TFC, throughout the crisis, there has been a real reversion to the HSBC brand. So well done to all of TFC. So just a quick summary on some of the transformation programs that we have. One HSBC Trade, major program. We are the biggest trade bank